YouTube, Bronny James has to be easily one of the most divisive players that have been drafted to the NBA in recent memory. In the 2024 NBA draft, the Los Angeles Lakers selected Bronny James with the 55th overall pick. And if you live under a rock, you might say, D-Have, 55th overall pick, why would a player drafted in the second round so late in the draft be so polarizing? And I will explain that to those who live under rocks. It's because Bronny James doesn't come from an ordinary family, his father, of course, being one of the greatest players the sport has ever seen in LeBron James. And so you have a lot of divisiveness whether or not there is nepotism involved in Bronny James being selected to the Lakers organization. And so you have kind of these two camps where one side are saying things like, well, you know, Bronny James, he doesn't belong in the NBA. And the only reason he got drafted there was because his dad plays for the Lakers, it's nepotism, and he's just not an NBA player. And you have people on another side saying basically, you know, Bronny's amazing and he's going to be the steal of the draft. He's going to be a great player just like his dad. The pick was well warranted, right? So I personally think the truth, just like in most situations, lies somewhere in the middle of those two things. And in this video, I'm going to be discussing some of the more divisive topics within the quote unquote Bronny James situation and giving my thoughts on them throughout the video. I mean, I will be making an attempt to be as objective as possible, just like I do with all my other videos on the channel, but I will give a quick disclaimer before I get into it. I'm a Bronny James supporter. You know, I want him to do well in his career. I want, you know, him and his father to succeed in their time with the Lakers, you know, moving forward for many years to come, right? I'm a big fan of Bronny's dad, and so I'm going to root for him as well. And so, you know, as an NBA fan who's also a fan of LeBron, I am going to be excited to see the father-son duo for the first time in NBA history. But, you know, with that being said, you know, I will do my best effort to not let that affect my analysis throughout this video of some of these more divisive points that are pretty polarizing on both sides, right? So while I'm a LeBron fan, while I'm, you know, going to be rooting for Bronny, I'm going to be sifting through the points that, you know, let's say Bronny stans are making and Bronny haters as well, and try to make sense of them. Without further ado, folks, let's get into the Bronny James situation discussion, starting with... Listen, we'd be kidding ourselves if we didn't think Bronny's dad being LeBron James didn't play into him getting drafted with that 55th overall pick. There is no question that that is a massive factor of not only Bronny getting drafted, but where he got drafted, playing for the same team as his father, right? So if all of that's true, which I believe it 100% is, it's kind of undisputable, we can reasonably leap to that is absolutely a form of nepotism. But here's the thing, that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing, right? Because when we hear about nepotism, we think of entitlement, we think of someone, you know, getting something that they didn't really earn. It's just because their family has a high ranking, whatever the thing is that they got their opportunity, you know, whatever it is that they're getting. While all that's true, I don't necessarily think it has to mean in this particular case that Bronny James doesn't belong in the NBA or, you know, isn't going to be an NBA caliber player. I just think it's a little bit separate, those two things. Whether or not Bronny's an NBA player, whether or not he deserves to be in the league, as I stated, is a little bit separate from the issue of, you know, him being favored in the draft to go to the Lakers, right? So I think these are two a little bit different things. I'm going to attempt to explain it throughout this video, but 100% nepotism is involved in this situation, and it's part of the reason it's so divisive, right? I can see both sides on this one where, you know, people say, oh, well, he only got drafted because LeBron's his dad, and, you know, now he signs this big contract, and, like, he just has no place in the league. I get that side of it. I also get the side of, like, yeah, well, if you really critically analyze his short, you know, basketball career so far, you could make a case that, you know, he should have been drafted. Maybe you could say it shouldn't have been by the Lakers. Maybe you could say, you know, nepotism was involved, but he could end up being good. So I see both sides, but 100% nepotism, the claims are real, okay? This happened, you know, this is a situation where if LeBron played for another team, he probably would have went there, all right? So it's 100% nepotism in this case, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's a terrible thing and he doesn't deserve it. On to the next point. So, you know, people are going to say that Bronny James, his college production was super awful and the efficiency was really bad. And so that would lead to some people thinking that no one would have got drafted with these college production results, right? And so, I get where these people are coming from. You know, if you see numbers like that, you see at a super lackluster season at USC, you say, how are you getting drafted at all with those numbers, right? Other than the fact that your name is LeBron James Jr., right? That's pretty reasonable, in my opinion. I think that's fair, but I would just add a little bit of context to this. You know, I do think there is more to this story. Like most things, it's not that simple. For one, you know, I do think it's fair to say that he's a 55th overall pick. You know, it's not like he was drafted in the lottery. It's not like he was a first round pick. It's not like, you know, this is a crazy spot for someone with bad college production to go. There have been plenty of players in the NBA that have been drafted higher than this that haven't had the best college numbers. You know, I don't think you could say some of them are as bad as this, right? Like some of these numbers are pretty bad, but I will say, you know, having bad college production isn't necessarily that important to a draft prospect and a draft evaluation. You know, there could be plenty of reasons why the player has bad numbers, but you know, a team could also think he will have good numbers in the NBA. I believe when an NBA team is evaluating a prospect that they may take in the draft, they are not evaluating their college production. When you're drafting a player in the NBA, it's not about how good they were in college, it's about how good they can become in the NBA in the future, right? So you're not drafting, you know, the player they are or even the player they were, you're drafting the player they will become on the next level. And those two things can be a little bit complicated because let's say there's a player that has bad college production with really bad numbers, but also has all of the skills an NBA scout would look for that could translate to the best level. You know, just because they didn't succeed, maybe they had a bad coaching system. I'm not saying this is all true about Bronny, but I'm just saying hypothetically, this could be a case that you could see pretty consistently in the NBA. We see a lot of times where even lottery picks, you know, don't have great college production. My point basically is that, you know, college statistics have nothing to do with what you're going to do in the NBA. And so I don't necessarily think it's fair to say that just because he had really bad college numbers that he doesn't belong in the NBA. We've seen it plenty of times before. We'll see it plenty of times again. You know, we're going to talk about later in the video, you know, some things that could have contributed to his super lackluster season at USC production wise compared to his projections going into USC as the 20th ranked recruit, 4-star recruit going into USC. So there's plenty of little nuanced things that we're going to talk about in this video in a different section, but you know, that's kind of my piece on the bad college production. So I really want to emphasize this point because this is the one I think, you know, isn't necessarily being super fairly represented towards Bronny and his situation as a whole. I think it's a little bit more complicated than people are giving it credit for. I can easily see how someone could say, I saw his college numbers, you know, I watched some of the tape, it's not great, right, at USC. Therefore, he's not NBA ready, okay? And again, I can 100% see that. That's totally reasonable, and I can agree with that to some extent if that's your conclusion. However, we have to paint the full picture to really decide, you know, if that's true or not. Because for one, if you look at him throughout his high school career, it was very evident that this was a talented player. All of the, you know, family aside, right, all his name aside and everything, this was a very talented basketball player with a very intriguing skill set. You know, when you look at Bronny's skill set, you know, he is a little bit of a smaller guard, but he is an exceptional athlete, all right? So that's one thing you can't take away from Bronny. He's got the athleticism, he's got the juice. In high school, he was a sniper from the outside. He was a great three-point shooter. We saw it in the McDonald's All-American game. We saw it at the Combine. In high school, he's showing flashes of being a next level, you know, guard athlete on multiple levels. It's not just jumping, it's not just speed, it's a lot of different things, as well as he has good defensive instincts and good length for his size, right? So he is a little bit smaller of a guard, but he does have good length on his arms, which, you know, can make up for a lot of height discrepancies between matchups as a guard defensively and the shooting, right? So, you know, at best, I thought going into USC last year, we'd see Bronny James project into this, you know, season or the draft as a really good like 3-and-D guard prospect, right? You know, he didn't necessarily flash to me as a great playmaker, but that's something that could be developed. But he had all the physical tools and instincts to be able to be a very good role player guard in this league. And that's why I thought, you know, clearly this guy's gonna be a first-round pick. I don't care what his name is, if it's James Jr. or if it's anything else, right? And so that is something that, you know, I think is worth noting. The skills, the physical traits, they are still there despite his college production. The Combine, we saw at the Combine, he had one of the better combines of any guard, okay? So bear with me here. I'm making a long point, but it will be worth it at the end. It'll pay off, right? So at the Combine, Bronny James recorded a 40.5-inch vertical leap, which was the 4th highest among all Combine participants, and he had good agility scores as far as the rest of the guards. He also shot 19 of 25 in the three-point shooting drill, which ranks 2nd overall. As I mentioned the length before, he measured at the Combine at 6'1" without shoes. His wingspan was measured at 6'7.5", and he weighed in at 210 pounds. And so this is an NBA body, no question about it. There are smaller guards with long wingspans that are exceptional defenders. You know, they compared him to Gabe Vincent and Gary Harris for some, you know, body comparisons for NBA players. So it's clear that the physical tools and the abilities are 100% there. You know, it's just about having a bad college season. And so my point after all that being said is to say it's not crazy or out of the realm of possibility that we see a, you know, guard that was a high recruit, 4-star recruit that has very intriguing upside as an athlete, a shooter, and has good work ethic, basketball instincts, and character go 55th overall in the draft. It's not crazy at all. I think that's totally reasonable despite the, you know, bad college production. Again, you're not drafting the player he is, you're drafting the player he could become. And in that case, the skills, abilities, and athletic traits are the most important thing for that. I would argue, you know, it's not a question of character. It's not a question of work ethic. So, you know, the work ethic, the character are there, and all those things I just mentioned are there. So that would lead a lot of people to believe believe he could still absolutely develop into an NBA caliber rotation guard. No question about it. So for him to go 55th, if we're just, looking at it as a full picture, right? I get that the, college production is a super bad blemish on that full picture. It looks really bad, right? But all the other things, check. They all check the boxes. So I just want to paint the full picture there. So to say he's not NBA ready is probably true, right? But again, as I mentioned before, there are plenty of lottery picks that aren't NBA ready every single season. We're drafting on upside and potential, not necessarily what they've already done, right? So not NBA ready is just not a good argument. I think if you're going to make the case that, Bronny James shouldn't be drafted 55th, you can make different ones, including the nepotism thing, including some other stuff we're going to get into. But to say that he can't be a good NBA player or he's nowhere near like an NBA caliber prospect, it's not true, because of all the things I've stated. I think I made a pretty good case there. And so there's plenty of things to like about him, no question. The combine was just one of those things. All the other stuff you have to take into account. It's just not a good argument, period, right? On to the next point. So this one is bad. I won't lie to you. There's good things about this situation, as we've demonstrated. There's also really, things you could look at unfavorably with the situation. This is one of them. I'll explain it a little bit in greater detail. Basically, Rich Paul, his agent, Bronny's agent, also LeBron's agent, one of the biggest agents in the league, he basically was telling teams on draft day, Bronny's not going to play for you guys if you select him. He's only going to play for the Lakers. So don't even bother picking him because, he's just not going to play for you. So you're better off taking someone else. And so, basically teams were forced to just not select Bronny. And in fact, I think he actually would have been selected higher than he was at 55 if this didn't happen. There's plenty of teams in the, 40s range that would have taken Bronny, I believe, not even just because they wanted to lure LeBron in, not even just because of the, market value Bronny would, sell tickets, right? But simply because he, is a good NBA prospect, in my opinion, certainly for that draft range. So, at least good enough to take within, anywhere from 40 to, 55. You could say a team could take him and feel okay about it. My point is that this just doesn't look good. It's not a good situation for Bronny. Anytime this happens where a player says, and their agent says, I'm not playing for this team, so don't even take me, it's looked at as kind of a diva move, right? And I kind of agree with that. But I will say in this case, I don't think we should really be blaming Bronny for this situation. Just like a lot of these things, I'm not sure a lot of this stuff is his fault. I'm not sure the nepotism stuff is his fault. Like, for one, if he has an opportunity to play with his dad and, agent Rich Paul says, hey, this is how you play with your dad, right? This is how you stay at home in LA. Remember, he grew up there, he lives there. This is the best situation for you. We can get you a big contract. Like, if your agent's telling you that, I think you listen to your agent. Of course, he could have told Rich Paul no, I would assume, and said, I'm going to play for whatever team selects me. But it's just not necessarily smart to do that, in his shoes, right? So I don't necessarily think we can blame Bronny for all of this stuff. I think if you're going to blame anyone, you should direct the criticism toward LeBron James, toward Rich Paul, and towards the Lakers organization for facilitating the whole thing, right? So that's another point I want to talk about. It's just, while some of this stuff is bad, including the nepotism, including the agent stuff around draft day, telling teams he's not going to play there, I just don't think, we could really attribute a lot of blame to Bronny for these things. I think he's just kind of put in a situation where, hey, this makes the most sense to me. I'm going to trust my dad. I'm going to trust, Rich Paul. They've had a lot of success, doing these types of things. And I trust my dad, obviously, right? So again, this is a kid in a, big time market in a new world, and he's just trusting the big dogs like he's supposed to, right? But yeah, I just don't think we should blame him for this, but it does look bad. It is kind of a, diva move. Whoever facilitated it, whoever's behind it, I don't think it's Bronny, but whoever is, it's bad. It's a bad thing, I think, to do, and it just makes you look bad, and I just don't think, it's going to be looked upon favorably. So yeah, that is a reasonable thing to criticize. 100%, I'm with you there. I think it's a bad thing. On to the next point. Another bad thing. It's not bad in terms of Bronny getting his money. Another thing you just can't blame Bronny for, right? If they're offering you this money on this year's over something smaller, you take the bigger offer, right? Like, how is he going to sign less money? We shouldn't be criticizing him for that. If you're going to say that, him being the highest paid second round pick ever or whatever it is bad because of the, favoritism aspect, I can get behind you there. I think that's a good point. I think that's fair criticism. I don't think it's reasonable to say that this isn't favoritism. Again, we're not discrediting Bronny as a prospect here in this video. We're just discrediting, maybe the Lakers organization for giving up a lot of stuff and, assets and energy and investment. You could maybe make a case just to keep LeBron happy and appease him so he sticks around in LA. Again, I think they're totally right to do that. It's not necessarily against the rules. It's not necessarily, a cheap tactic or anything. If anything, it's only going to hurt them in the long run. But I'm saying, like, it is bad in the optical sense in terms of how people are going to see it, right? Like, because we're only seeing the contract, we're only seeing what the media is telling us. We don't see all the behind the scenes stuff. And so what we're seeing in this regard as well is another thing that looks like favoritism. It looks like nepotism. And so you can say that's bad in that regard if you want to. I can 100% see the, comparison between this and favoritism, right? It makes sense to me. But again, I don't think we should, be directing any criticism towards Bronny. And, that's kind of a theme of this video because he is getting most of the flack. He is getting his name dragged on Twitter. He is getting all of the criticism when really, if you're going to criticize anybody, which I think is reasonable to do in these situations that I've described, as far as the contract, as far as the nepotism, as far as the favoritism, we should be, criticizing productively, not toxically, right? I don't support any of that. That's happening a ton and I'm not for it. But if you're going to criticize anyone, criticize the Lakers organization, criticize their ownership, their, front office, criticize LeBron James for potentially facilitating this whole thing, right? Do not criticize Bronny for signing a big contract that was offered to him by a legitimate organization, okay? The winningest organization in NBA history. Like, we just can't criticize Bronny for that. I would have taken the contract. You would have taken the contract too. Don't act like you wouldn't. One more thing, and then I'll wrap it up with my thoughts. The Summer League production can either go both ways. I kind of look at it as more of a positive thing because early in his, first 2 Summer League games, Bronny played basically 4 Summer League games. And so, the first game against the Rockets, he was bad. It was just a bad performance. He shot poorly, 0 of 8 from 3, 3 of 14 from the field. I don't know how much you want me to go in on this. It's just a bad performance. In the second game against the Celtics, another kind of really rough one here, 1 of 5 from the field, 0 of 3 from the 3-point line. And again, this is the first 2 games we're seeing of Bronny against, similar to NBA level comp. Again, these are not necessarily all NBA players he's playing against, but some of them are NBA players. And, this is certainly better competition that he faced at USC. So a lot of, emphasis was put on this by fans to see how, he was going to be against this type of competition. He comes out of the first 2 games shooting really poorly and really just struggling out there, right? And so this is when Bronny, in my opinion, received the most hate. This is when it was cool and trendy to, call him a bum and call him a scrub and, call him Nepo baby and stuff like that. But hey, I will say, man, I don't see a lot of people talking a lot of that stuff after these next 2 games. And, people got a little bit quiet after this, which I thought was cool. You always love to see somebody shut everybody up. And, in the Hawks game, which the Lakers won, second to last game, he shot 5 of 11 from the field, 2 of 5 from 3. These are good numbers here for a guard. 12 points, a rebound, a steal, 1 turnover, 1 foul. That's a positive game. Those are good numbers for me, right? And in the final game, he got even better. So we're seeing a pattern here of him, getting better throughout the Summer League, right? So he found his rhythm. He bounced back. And I think that's an encouraging sign here. In the final game, it was clearly his best, in my opinion. Another good game. 5 of 10 from the field, 1 of 3 from 3. He scored 13 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 blocks, 3 turnovers, 1 foul. Those are good numbers again. And the Lakers won. So, just as an NBA fan's perspective, I hope the success can be built off of over those last 2 Summer League games. I do think it's encouraging rather than discouraging that he performed well towards the end and bounced back rather than saying, oh, well, he played bad the first 2, so it's a bad Summer League and he's bad, blah, blah, blah. I don't think we should really look at it that way. I think anytime a player can bounce back after a bad performance and show a little bit of resilience after receiving all the criticism he did at such a young age, this is a good thing, not a bad thing. I think that's a positive sign. And so now we'll wrap up with my thoughts. So kind of just an overall, general overarching thing here, some of my thoughts here. Again, I'll emphasize one more time, I know I said it a bunch, but it's not really Bronny's fault. We're being favorited, right? Like, he shares the same last name as someone powerful, who's earned their power, by the way, who's earned their influence, by the way. And, the organization behind that, influential person, LeBron James, have decided to back him in the regard of maybe showing a little bit more favoritism to Bronny, right? And so I don't think this is Bronny's fault, and I don't think he should be criticized for being favored. favorited. Of course, you're going to take good opportunities when they come to you. That is the smart thing to do. You know, you're going to take the bigger contract. You're going to take the opportunity to stay at home with your family, learn from your dad on the NBA level and play for one of the greatest organizations in history. Of course, you're going to take those opportunities no matter what people say. I think it's, unfair to criticize Bronny for this. You should criticize LeBron. You should criticize Rich Paul, Rob Pelinka, Jeannie Buss, like Lakers organization, not Bronny himself. All right. So, another thing I just wanted to note for the video, I think Bronny's a really good kid. I think he's got a good head on his shoulders. He's in a really tough and difficult situation just because he has a certain name that was given to him from birth. Right. And so, he's got a good position and I think he's making the most of it. And I think that is a smart thing for him to do. He seems like a, positive kid. He seems like he, understands what the pressure is. And I think he's handling it about as good as he can. This is a lot of pressure for, an 18-year-old. If you put this pressure on most 18-year-olds, including myself, I would have crumbled. I just wouldn't have been able to handle it. I think he's doing a good job, just like his dad did at that age. I just think he's a good person. I do want to highlight that for this video because, at the end of the day, when you criticize people in a toxic way, when they're a good person and they don't really deserve a lot of it, I think it's kind of scummy. I think we should probably try to stop doing that if we're, watching this video right now. I see a lot of stuff on Twitter that's just kind of gross, right? And so maybe we should be a little bit more reasonable with our criticism. There's a productive way to criticize. It's called constructive criticism. It might be saying, something on Twitter like, well, here are some numbers that I found from Bronny's college. If he improves on this, I think he could be a better player. That's called constructive criticism. That's just one form of it. You're not necessarily insulting him. You're just pointing out something they could be doing better in hopes to, have them receive the information and actually play better, right? That's a good thing, I think. There is also the form of criticism where it's like toxic and you say, Bronny's a bum. He doesn't belong in the NBA. He's a loser, blah, 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 blah. This is not helpful to anyone. It's only just negative and it makes kind of the world a worse place overall. So I think we should stop doing that. But, again, to be such a good kid and handle the pressure as well as he has as a person, I have a lot of respect for that. He's had so much put on his plate at such a young age, just like his dad did. And a lot of it just not something he really asked for, right? Like, you can't really say Bronny's going out of his way to put more pressure on himself. I think it's mostly just coming from outside, and I think he's handling it well. And the last thing, this is a long point here, I just want to say that, overcoming what he had to at USC, it absolutely had to play a role in his struggles at USC, all right? It just had to. For example, what a normal freshman college player has to adjust to going into the season, for their college is, a major increase level of competition, right? The players are better that you're playing against, and so you have to adjust to that on the floor. You also have to adjust to living somewhere else a lot of times. I know Bronny went to USC, it's close to home, but, it is a new place he had to live, I would assume. I don't know if we're going to say Bronny was, commuting to USC every day, right? Maybe he was, I don't know. Winning expectations, right? In high school, if you don't win and you show a lot of talent, it's not necessarily the end of the world. It's just high school, right? We see that all the time. A lot of prospects, don't have a great record in high school, but they're like great athletes and they're, showing signs of being, potential NBA player. So in college, it's not the same, man. You're expected to win. Like, these are important games you're playing and it's a little bit different of an environment. It's a lot different of an environment, right? So these are winning expectations here. You have to adjust to that. Again, these are all normal things freshmen have to go through, right? Having to look forward to NBA draft stock, right? Instead of just playing basketball, that's something that's a curveball that's thrown into your daily routine, I would imagine. It's going to affect some of your decisions. Learning a new system, acclimating with teammates and coaching. Again, you're putting in a new system. You're expected to play maybe a little bit different of a role. It's not just necessarily going out there and hooping just like you were in high school. There's a lot of behind the scenes stuff as far as schemes, as far as coaching, as far as personalities you have to adjust to. And so all of that's hard enough for a normal college freshman. Now you add things that aren't normal for a college freshman, including sharing the last name and name in general of one of the greatest players of all time, which will entail 99% more media coverage than any other college player will get, despite not being like, a first overall recruit, right? So nobody was expecting Bronny to be the first pick, but he still got 99% of the media coverage than anybody else would. And so that's difficult to ask of an 18-year-old. It's hard enough to adjust and succeed in a new environment with, increased pressure. It's another thing to throw all of that extra stuff on top of them and still expect them to, have good results. Not even mentioning the most difficult adversity he had to face in his life, I would imagine, and that is going through cardiac arrest before the season started in a USC, practice. This cannot be understated how much this impacted his season. There's no question. For me, we get different Bronny James results with no cardiac arrest last season. This just added another mountain of adversity to, an already adverse situation, which I talked about. All those things the normal freshmen have to go through. And then we talk about the media expectations for Bronny as opposed to other freshmen. And now you add this on his plate, right? And so what this entails, it clearly affected his performance. There's just no question. I understand that he's healthy when he came back, right? But healthy in body, right? But not necessarily perfectly, put in position to succeed, okay? So let me explain. When something like this happens, cardiac arrest, not only is your body and mental health going to be negatively impacted for months, you just don't get the reps and early season chemistry building with your new coach and new teammates. This is an underrated thing, man. When you go to a new team and you're expected to win, team bonding, right? Like, building chemistry throughout the, early stages of the seasons, working through mistakes, right? Having that experience is big time experience to be able to push you forward into success later in the season. Bronny James had to miss all that. He just, flat out had to miss all of that stuff. You miss things like practices, scrimmages, team building exercises, personality interactions for 4 or 5 months. So he actually missed like 4 or 5 months. Not to mention, after a cardiac arrest, your conditioning has to be at an all-time low when you're coming back, right? When you're rehabbing, because when you make your debut, I get that he's, cleared by doctors, he's ready to go, but for those 4 or 5 months, you're missing all those things that I just mentioned, and you really haven't even played like high-level basketball in months. And not even that, I would imagine after cardiac arrest, please let me know down in the comment section if I'm wrong. I'm almost positive after something like that, like there's no way Bronny James was allowed on like a treadmill even for, at least like a few weeks. Okay, so it's probably the first time in his life he wasn't allowed to exercise. And for a basketball player that's so heavily reliant on his conditioning and trying to make, an impact on his team, your conditioning is just thrown for a loop, right? So you have to gain all of that back. And, we could talk about how there's a difference between game speed and like, good exercise, treadmill and all that stuff. Like it's just a different level. And so when you're not able to practice, you're not able to scrimmage, you're not able to do a lot of physical activities, you're not cleared by doctors to go, full send on exercise and conditioning, you're not exactly gonna be in shape. I don't care when your debut is, 6 months, 2 years, you're just not gonna be in game shape, right? And so that's gonna affect your performance. You already have so many expectations, and then he's expected game 1 to return without a hitch and just slide right into his new role with his new teammates, new coach that he's been away from for like a month or 2 or 3 or 4. And so it's unrealistic to expect, first round type of production in that case, right? I know that as the season went along, as things progress, he starts getting 5, 6, 7 games under his belt. Like, of course, you're going to expect a little bit, ramp up in production. That didn't necessarily happen all the time. But again, probably not, touching a basketball, shooting a basketball for like a month, not, running, not staying in shape. Like this is definitely more adversity that has to affect your season, not just physically, not just mental health wise, not just physical health wise, not just even emotionally, but just like strictly professionally, like practically in an imperial sense. There is no way that all of that stuff is not going to give you worse results. Again, I understand that when he's back, he's cleared by doctors, and so he's going to get judged as a healthy player, and he's going to get judged even more because he has James Jr. on the back of his jersey. But if we can just consider the possibility for 1 second, all of that stuff played into a lot of, bad results for him and USC at his, efficiency numbers, at his scoring totals, rebounds, assists, all that stuff, defensively. Now that we've made the case that, that clearly has to impact you on some level, even if you think it's a small level, it does impact his production. I don't think you can really say that, he should be realistically expected to perform like a lottery pick at that point, even if he has lottery pick talent, which I don't think he does, but you know what I'm saying? Like, even if you expect those results, you cannot make a case that his production wasn't severely impacted by that. Maybe you could say not severely, but if we do consider and agree that it affected his, college production, if we all agree that he has good physical tools, physical traits, good work ethic, good head on his shoulders, good high school, film and all that stuff, and great traits, you could make a case realistically that at 55, this player, arguably should have been higher. If we're just going to say that, all of these things could have resulted in a fluke of a season for him. Okay. So if we're going to say that he's not worth a 55 pick, with all the stuff I've laid out in this video, I just don't think you could say that. If anything, you could say you should have been taken higher with all of the stuff I laid out. There's a good chance for me that if Bronny doesn't have cardiac arrest early in the season, he actually, is a first round pick. Like that's where he was projected to go. Some people even had him in the top 20, and some people even had him in the top 10 before he, went to USC. I personally think we get a very different result last season at USC, and we're not even having this conversation in this video right now. Bronny's just a first round pick by some team, and everyone's excited for him, right? Again, it's unknown. It's impossible to say what would have happened, but I do believe on a major scale, this impacted his production, and I think it was somewhat of a fluke. We'll have to see him earn it and prove it in the NBA, of course, or in the G League, or wherever he ends up with the Lakers next season. But I'm telling you, man, that's just not something that's talked about all the time. And, I'm just trying to, connect dots where I think they should be connected, and, just build a case, that I just think it's not as simple as, he's he's bad and, you know, he's favorited and, you know, he's going to be bad. Like, I just don't think I just think it's worth mentioning all that stuff I just said. So, you know, with all that laid out, I do believe Bronny will have the chance. You know, he certainly has everybody believing in him. He is in a great situation. I believe Bronny has a chance to be a rotation level NBA role player as a kind of a 3-and-D guard with good defensive upside, great, you know, athleticism. I think at best you could be like trying to think of a comp for him. One comp that comes to mind as a Sixers fan is D'Anthony Melton, right? Like knockdown, catch and shoot three, really good athlete, you know, can guard 1 and 2s exceptionally well, great perimeter defender. He can play, you know, a starting 2-guard role off ball. Maybe he ups his playmaking and stuff like that a little bit down the road. But I think D'Anthony Melton could be a good comp for Bronny, just a little bit more upside maybe. But I think if you get a D'Anthony Melton level player at 55, like a starting 2-guard caliber 3-and-D, maybe just kind of like a 3-and-D combo guard that can handle the ball, that, you know, fills a specific role, I think that is really good value at 55. I think that's probably his best case scenario. Maybe we could see him take leaps and other stuff, like I said, like with playmaking, with self-creation. I just don't know about that. We'll have to see. Listen, with this video, I'm not trying to change your mind. You know, I'm not trying to make you think what I think or make you believe what I believe. That's not the point of this video. My point of the point of this video is just to engage in critical thought, right? Like maybe provide some entertainment, some critical thought. I know probably everyone watching this video right now is on one side or another of this issue, like pretty heavily, but I'm not trying to like convince you of the stuff that I believe. I don't really believe in doing that kind of thing on this channel. You know, I'm just trying to give information, maybe add some context to things, you know, provide some entertainment and kind of just go in depth on the whole situation. But you know, if you come away with this, you know, still thinking what you think, that's totally fine. I respect your opinion. As long as you're not being toxic to people, as long as you're not, you know, going about it in a super unhealthy way, I'm totally cool with you, you know, doing whatever you want, right? And believe in what you believe. I just hope I made you think a little bit. You know, that's kind of the point of this video, is to, you know, engage you guys in critical thought, engage myself in critical thought throughout the process of planning, writing, recording this video, and, you know, editing and stuff like that. So if you can come away and, you know, have thought about the issues a little bit more clearly, maybe a little bit more in depth, then I feel like I've done a good job. If one person can do that, you know, I'm not trying to change your mind. If you do change your mind, that's cool. If you don't, that's cool too. You know, I just want you to think about it a little bit more. I'm just trying to make an effort to make this space a little bit more positive, at least on my end of things, right? I'm trying to build a positive community, positive channel where people can come for NBA content. Don't attack people. Like, it's just not, it's not worth it, right? Like, you don't get anything out of it. You know, they don't get anything out. It's just bad, right? But if you're positive, you know, maybe you can, if your goal is to change someone's mind about something, maybe you can have a better success rate. I'm sure you can. If you attack people and tell them they're stupid, they're way less likely to change their mind on whatever the issue is. And so, like, what your goal really is, I think is important to remember. But hopefully guys, you know, enjoyed the video. You know, I'm rooting for Bronny next season. I wish the best for everyone involved. You know, I hope Lakers aren't making a mistake. I don't think they are, man. I think Bronny's gonna have a good long NBA career. Hopefully you guys have a great rest of your day today. Make sure you leave a comment down below what you think of this situation. What you think of the video? Is there anything I missed? Is there anything I got wrong? Please tell me down below. Lakers fans, what are we feeling? I think you got a fun upcoming year for you guys, right? And you got LeBron. Just be happy about that. Hopefully guys have a great rest of your day. Make sure you leave a like on the video. It really helps out the video, helps new people find the video. Subscribe to the channel. That's one of the biggest things you can do. You know, if you guys are trying to support, if you liked it, you know, please subscribe, leave a like, leave a comment, or, you know, please subscribe. We're trying to get to 14K by the time the season starts, right? That's our goal. So we're getting closer every day. I need you guys to be a part of this journey with me, man. We're gonna do so many special things in this NBA community. I love you so much for watching all the way to the end. Make sure you guys follow my Twitter, my Twitch. You know, I stream on Twitch. I'm gonna be doing it pretty consistently. I'm gonna be streaming NBA 2K gameplay and stuff like that, and I'll be talking to you guys in real time. You can ask me anything. You know, you can just watch, hang along, whatever. It's gonna be a fun time, man. You know, we already did our first stream. It was a lot of fun. Hopefully you guys enjoy the rest of your day today, and, you know, maybe try to have a little bit more of a critical analysis of things before we're toxic on Twitter, right? So hopefully, you know, you guys can consider what I said, but if not, it's okay. You know, I respect everybody. I'll catch you guys in the next one tomorrow. This is your boy D Haven. As always, peace.